Hello, and welcome to the Footy Podcast. To benefit Here's Help. Here's Help is a nonprofit comprehensive rehabilitation and educational agency that's been providing treatment services in South Florida since 1968. For more information on Here's Help or Footy's podcast, you can contact us at 305-685-8201. If you need help or know someone who has a substance abuse or alcohol problem, you can call our admissions office at 305-685-8201, extension 224. If you'd like to make a cash donation to Here's Help and join the fight against drug abuse, call Footy at 305-685-8201, extension 227. Now, here's Footy.
Welcome to our
Footy Podcast.
I'm Footy, of course, and this is Ron Hersey. And we do use some of the guys at Here's Help to go on the show and talk about what they've been through. Our studio is in the buildings at Here's Help on 151st and 27th Avenue, and we have a school, we have a culinary school, we have all types of learning centers that we specialize in, and then of course we have the regular programs of Here's Help, substance abuse treatment, and aftercare and follow up, and then of course we also have outpatients, and we have outpatients here in North Dade, and we have outpatients in our South Dade program, our location down there. So if you're in the need for any of these types of services, feel free to contact us. We will connect you with the proper agency, or we will be the proper agency. So don't be shy. It's free of charge. You don't have to pay anything.
And I know the website address is here'shelpinc.com, but the phone number to call for information is
305-685-8201. You can contact us anytime.
Well, all the phone numbers are on the website. Well, you were talking about the campus and about how there's a Dade County Public School and the culinary program that Chef Tracy's got going on in there with that incredible kitchen that's been generously provided by Pepe Badilla, and the computer lab, the art school. I was curious, how is the plumbing school coming along?
Oh, well, we're in construction. It's
right.
The walls are up. We're getting... what the holdup was that we faced was permits.
Right, which is always the case when it comes to construction.
It took us a while to get all the permits straightened out, and I think we finally did. So then we'll be able to move on to the next thing. But building a building is not a simple thing.
Right, you would think it would be so easy.
Yeah, it's not. And we're building a plumbing school to go along with our culinary school, as you mentioned, our high school, our other encounters, our gardening, and
you got the automotive repair.
Automotive. Well, that's
off campus.
That's in Broward County, but they give us scholarships to the Youth Automotive Training Center. Our thinking is we got to find a new path, a new life. The replacement life. A replacement life, new interest, and a different way to go, and a different territory. In other words, you better look. If we send you to the Youth Automotive Training Center, and you go every day for a full school year, the old life is getting rusty in the back, and that's good.
Right.
And it's not 100%, but they have a lot of success, and we appreciate the relationship we have with them, and they do a terrific job.
Well, it's interesting that the occupations that you've picked, and we've talked about this before. It's like there's always going to be a need for plumbers. There's always going to be a need for auto repair guys and gals for that matter, but guys in this situation. There's always going to be a need for food preparing people. So those occupations are. It's not like how many professions have we seen that have fallen by the wayside due to the technology. I can remember when I was in high school, key punch was going to be the career of the future. How many key punch people do you know now?
I remember when I was in high school, there was they punch me was pretty much what they would seem to me to be the
that was the profession of choice.
Yeah, they were big with that. Yeah.
But that it just
actually, to be honest with you, you get used to it.
I don't know if I'd ever get used to getting punched.
Well, you do. Believe me.
Well, I'll have to give it a try. I'll have to catch you off guard.
Yeah. But anyway, so you have to find a different path, a new path. That we also have art, music. We have a lot of graphics, things that we do. Mm-hmm. We have our own band. We have our own radio show, podcast every week. Right. So we have a lot of things going on.
And I've said it 100 times, when I first met you, when I first came to Y100 in 1982 or 83, you just had one building on this property. It was the house. It was a house, I think.
Yeah, the main building.
And didn't you start out with a trailer? You were in a mobile home?
Yeah. Well, we started out at a farmhouse in Northwest 7th Avenue.
Uh-huh. And what year was that? Around
151st Street. It was like 69.
Wow.
And very rudimentary though back then. But it had the same effect. Mm-hmm. We had a lot of guys, and we had a hell of a softball team, I'll tell you that.
You put together a hell of a basketball team. Do you remember the time we at Y100 you were always the one that was coming up with the promotions. But you put together a basketball game between us and the Broward Sheriff's Office.
Oh, I remember that, yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And so it was supposed to be the Y100 personalities versus the Broward Sheriff's Office. So we all showed up, but what it wound up being was a bunch of guys from Here's Help that had been playing basketball every day out here in the on the basketball court. 6'8".
We took a look at you guys.
Well,
and said we have a team already.
We need ringers. I kept the bench warm for most of the game, and finally, after you managed to run the score up on the VSO, and Lori teases me about this to this day because we had just started, we had just met each other. And we had just started spending time together in those days. And she came to the basketball game, and there was only about 5 minutes left in the game. And you felt bad because I'd been sitting there the whole time. And you finally put me out. And I lasted one play. I got about halfway down the court, tripped over my own feet. There was nobody around me. I was completely by myself and went face down on the court.
Well, the other guys were actual basketball players.
Yeah, they knew what they were doing. But that was funny. You always managed to find that little edge in any competition like that. That infamous go-kart drag race with Y100 personality Tremonti Watts at the Palm Beach.
We're lucky somebody didn't die in that little stunt.
Well, all I remember was you had been real tight with Bobby Coyle and his crew, his chief mechanic that you nicknamed Lugnut, over at Hialeah Speedway, and they all showed up for the and we promoted the hell out of that thing. Big grudge match between Footy and Tremonti Watts at the drag race and go-karts. And I remember they pushed the go-karts up to the the Christmas tree, the starting line at the strip, and Lugnut and like 5 guys came out of nowhere, came from the shadows, and Tremonti's go-kart just disappeared for 30 seconds and then came right back out again. And it was, the funny thing is Tremonti was standing right there with his back to the golf cart talking up probably some listener, and he didn't
they were fixing the engine.
Yeah, they were fixing it all right.
I was at the finish line. He wasn't even in the go-kart yet.
The lights turned green. You hit the gas. Like, I've never seen a go-kart like actually smoke tires. Yours just like took off, and Tremonti hit the gas and it just like died.
I looked at him, I go, you didn't think this was going to be like a fair race, did you? But Tremonti was a great guy, but he was kind of a hick. And I smelled that out of him. And then, me and Lugnut,
you took care of him.
We fixed his cart for him. It went like this.
It was like those cartoon cars, you know?
And I was down at the finish line already.
With your helmet off, waving.
Having a beer, with Bobby Coyle and all those guys.
And getting high fives from Lugnut. Oh, my God.
And Mark Cowherd was in that crew, too.
Yeah, those were good times. And you know who I was thinking?
I still see Mark every once in a while.
Really? What's he doing now? He was...
Retired. He's playing golf.
Yeah.
He always has he's one of the guys, he's always got something going on.
Yeah.
And he does. He's got something going on.
Those days at Hialeah Speedway were just so much fun because they used to have those.
Yeah, except when you went on fire.
Well, was that your last? Was that when you finally decided that I'm done with this?
No.
You raced after that?
Oh, yeah. We got to remember, I went to boats.
Right, but I mean, you gave up on the cars after that.
No, I did some car
Did you?
stuff too. Yeah.
So what they would do is they would have these like celebrity. They called it enduro. They'd have like 100 cars on the track, and TV and radio people. Every radio station in South Florida had a guy in the race, and Footy had all hooked up with Bobby Coyle, who was probably the most successful driver of that era at Hialeah Speedway. And Bobby would send
he was a Hialeah boy.
Yeah. And he would send Lugnut and his crew out, and they would find us these used cars and weld the doors shut for us. I think the only requirement to be in was you had to have a car, the doors had to be welded shut, and you had to have a fire suit. I think that
and a helmet.
And that was it. And Bobby had plenty of helmets and fire suits to go around.
Yeah.
And so we raced several times out at Hialeah, and what you're referring to is I recall, because I had already gotten knocked out of the race, so I was already sitting in the stands by the time your car caught on fire. But as I recall, and I think you have actually a different remembrance of how it happened, for some reason, your car just gave out in turn 4, and a car came by, and their fuel line had been ripped apart. Because, I mean, it got...
Well, they hit me, too.
Yeah, and it just sprayed your car with flaming gasoline. And I remember sitting...
Yeah, I jumped out the passenger window.
It took you forever. That was I don't know how long it took you to get out, but it seemed like days.
You know what's funny is that I went to... a friend of mine had a car dealership, and I went over to the dealership for something else.
Mm-hmm.
And the woman who was like, organizing the purchases or whatever, she looks at me and she goes, "Oh my God, you're alive!" And I said, "Yeah, that's how I got here." She goes, "She was there. She was sitting in the front row."
Wow.
Of that area when the car blew up and everything went crazy.
Yeah.
And
I mean, we had to move. We had to look at the heat from your car was actually, then the smoke and the flames were actually coming across the wall into the stands. I mean, they were evacuating the stands.
Hey, look, if you can't take the stands, go home. This is not an event for the faint of heart.
Exactly, and it certainly was an OSHA nightmare. If OSHA had been around in those days, they would have shut that down in shorter.
In Hialeah at that time.
But Tremonti was one of the great characters at the time that you and I were at Y100. And you know who I was thinking about the other day, actually coming down here I was thinking about, was Don Cox on the radio.
Oh, okay.
I was talking about him.
I used to see him. He lived on the canal for the...
not in a house, literally on the bank of the canal.
Yeah, he lived in the canal in North Miami Beach.
Mm.
And I used to go down that canal to get into Moore Lake. That's what it was, to Moore Lake, because we used to race boats in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I would often see... I used to slow down by Cox's house and stuff and do stupid things and aggravate his
peace and quiet.
Yeah, and his wife, I have a picture of her that we went to dolphin camp with Cheech and Chong.
Oh, that was April, right? Was her name?
Oh, I
think it was April.
Remember.
Yeah, she was a record label rep, I think is how they met.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, you got to love a guy who marries the love of his life at the big nightclub in town. And as they walk down the aisle, as they walk down the aisle after
Cox.
Yeah, Cox. After the ceremony, they played "Another One Bites the Dust." that was Don's big request. Was once we're pronounced husband and wife, I want you to play.
Yeah, he never struck me as the husband type of guy.
Well, you talk about a hick. I mean, he was born and raised in Cumming, Georgia. You don't get any more hick than that.
He wasn't fooling around.
I mean, he assimilated pretty well.
Yeah.
The one thing I remember vividly about working with Don.
He got arrested for selling drugs.
Well, yeah, and he was behind bars when Sonny and I came to Y100, and then he served his time or got time off for good behavior or something. But he came back to the station after Sonny and I had already started.
You were back on the air.
Back on the air, yeah. And the thing that I remember was he would quit like every other day.
Oh, yeah.
I can remember one time I was actually standing in the lobby at the front desk, and they had that swinging, really heavy wooden swinging door that separated the front desk from the door that led to the studios. And I was standing there, chatting up the receptionist one day, and here comes Cox with that metal road case of a briefcase that he had, and you could just see from it was in the middle of his show. Robert Walker would say something to him, and he'd get mad, and he'd just pack up his stuff and just leave. And he kicked that wooden door open with his foot, and I was like just desperately trying to get.
Rob has been in California for a long time.
Long time.
But I think he's coming. He came back, or is coming back.
Really?
Yeah.
We need to talk to him. We should get him on here one of these days and get his recollections
Let's
for
not get
those
too
days.
carried away.
But did you know that
he racked up quite a list of his own.
Well, we all did in those days. That was a problem. But did you know that Robert Walker, Sonny Fox, and Don Cox all worked together in Cleveland? Did you ever hear that story?
I heard so many, especially from Cox.
They had.
You talk to Cox. He founded Arabia.
And the one about he was in Nam was another
Vietnam
reoccurring story.
He couldn't walk down to the bathroom, let alone go run around with a gun.
But the story goes that Lee Abrams, who pretty much was the founder of what we now know as album rock, he was going to flip a radio station in Chicago. It was a classical station. And John Tenaglia, who owned owned this station in Chicago, and he hired Lee Abrams to switch it to what's now known as classic rock. It was an album rock, and so Lee searched the country for the DJs that he thought would be the perfect mentality for this new format. And he brought Robert up from Memphis, who he was working, I think, HBQ. Sonny, I believe at the time, I think he may have been in San Diego. Not sure where Don was, but he brought them all to Chicago and, had all these meetings and talk about radio theory, and we're going to do this, this, and this. And some group in Chicago got wind that they were going to change this classical station to rock and roll. And they formed this committee. They hired a lawyer, and they filed an injunction against Tenaglia, saying that changing it from classical music was not in the public interest. Wow. And so, as a result of that, the whole thing fell apart, and they all went to Cleveland. But they were all staying in the same hotel in Cleveland, and Robert had gone downstairs to buy a pack of cigarettes at the gift shop. And these two guys in the lobby saw him, and they followed him up the stairs. And when he opened his hotel room door, they pushed him in and tied up him and his wife, threw him under the bed,
really? And
took all their worldly possessions and left them tied under the bed. I don't know how long.
Over a stupid radio station?
Yeah, I don't know how long they stayed tied up under the bed till somebody, I guess, got a pass key and came in, and that was when Robert decided he'd had enough of Cleveland. And that's how he wound up at Y100. So it was very ironic that the three of them who had kind of sort of worked together in Cleveland, all eventually reunited and all worked together at Y100. It's amazing, especially in radio, how things go full circle like
They should have
that.
followed me. But I would have been a harder guy to follow because half the time I was going to the Bahamas or
Right.
Key West or the Tortugas or somewhere. I was always going somewhere.
Well, for most people, being on a morning show in a top 10 market would be more than enough excitement. But you had, like you said, like a life outside of your broadcast that was probably even more exciting than what was going on in the radio,
I don't want to mention any names, but my friend Gary, we had quite a few little adventures there.
Right.
Yeah. You'd be surprised the amount of authorities there are around the coastline and entering areas of,
Well, yes, you don't realize in general how many times you're being watched.
Yeah.
Anywhere you are, but yeah, they really do keep a pretty close eye on the coast.
Yeah,
And-
yeah.
and-
And then they had the Bahamian Defense Force. They just shot at you. Okay, that's what they did.
Right, shoot first, ask questions later.
Yeah, me and Gary, they were shooting at us coming out of Allenstown. We thought it was fireworks
Right.
because when a bullet, tracer bullet,
Mhm.
glow. It looks like a fireworks.
Hence the name.
when you're not paying attention to the close. And all of a sudden we realized what it was, and we
Right.
got down and we took off. But we had a lot of
Well, you have to think at that time, a fast boat leaving Allenstown under cover of darkness was bound to raise some eyebrows.
fishermen.
Yes.
Fishermen. What do you think we did?
I'm just saying.
Oh, okay.
I'm just saying that from their standpoint. But yeah, again, it doesn't mean you just open fire.
Well, those were different days. But you're talking, if you really think about it, it's 40 years ago now.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
I
things are.
got kids as old as that.
Yeah. Another character I was thinking about from those days, for some reason, I don't know why I was thinking about the old Y100 days, but Cramer the Midday Man.
Oh.
What a character he was. And,
Well, he died.
yeah, well, unfortunately, we're losing a lot of those great guys
No, he
from
died
those
back
days.
then.
Yeah. He was at Power 96 by that time, but
Yeah.
his popularity was incredible. I mean, middays is not really one of
He was just a real easygoing. He was very nice. And
right. Now he came from when Tanner came from Mississippi.
He came with him.
And so did Reilly, right? Jim Reilly, and because he always
Yeah.
referred to Jim as the portly Iowa newsman.
Yeah.
Didn't they come
Jim
from
is still
Mississippi?
roaming around somewhere.
I think he's in California too, somewhere in hiding. Well, I remember he was still part of the morning show when Sonny and I came there. Tanner had left, but you were still there, and Jim Reilly was doing the news. And then at some point, I think Tanner had gone on to Wash FM in D.C., and at some
He
point,
wanted me to go with him.
well, he convinced Reilly to go. And wasn't there a story that
Yeah, well,
Jim moved up there, but he was living in a barracks, like an
I
old army
have no
barracks
idea,
or
no.
something?
I didn't go. I told him right off
Right.
the bat. I said, "Listen, I know what it's like up there. I don't need to go. I don't have to
I
go.
don't know
I don't
why-
want to go."
I don't know why Tanner took that job. That that turned out to be a major disaster for him.
Well, but it looked like a big deal. It was a
Big market, like top
big
5 market. yeah.
Washington D.C. Come on.
I think the company that owned it, I don't remember now, but it seems
He
like,
was driving me crazy to go there. And I
Yeah.
said, "Listen,
and it just
no, I'm not going."
it just didn't work. But
I stayed at Y100.
he left and came back here and started Hot 105 and put them on the map and led them to incredible rating success, and then went over to Power 96 and did the same thing there and brought Robert Walker and Cox and Cramer and that whole. I think Reilly even worked over there at one point, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I don't know if
G. Michael McKay was there, and
G.
and Mark
Michael.
Mosley and Bo Griffin.
Oh
and
my God.
that gang. That's where Lori worked. You're gonna. Oh, that was funny. Last time we were talking, you were mixing it up. I gave you a hard time, so now you're hiding it. That looks even worse, Footy. Oh,
Well, let me introduce you to Footy sauce.
Yes.
The chicken wing sauce is available at most public supermarkets, and if you contact us, if you go to our website and you tell us where you are, we can tell you where it's available to you in terms of geography. And but Publix is our biggest seller, and then of course there's the hot sauce, which is phenomenal.
Oh.
You know what this is great for?
what?
When you make shrimp.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and especially if you use cold cocktail shrimp and
Yeah.
you mix it in the ketchup and the other ingredients that you might use. This really works. Doesn't go bad.
Yeah.
It lasts forever.
It's good stuff. It doesn't have to last it doesn't last forever at my place because the bottle goes pretty quickly.
Yeah.
We're big wing people. Maybe you should do like a cookbook talking about your shrimp sauce and
I got
recipe.
enough.
You got enough irons in the fire at the moment?
I'm building a plumbing school, okay? What do you think? It's not.
Yes, and it's good to point out that all the money that you spend on Footy sauce goes right here to the Here's Help campus, and it's used to build things like the plumbing school and help provide these young men with their replacement life. And clearly, it goes to the school. Footy doesn't.
And women, but women we put in outpatient.
Right, but clearly it gets used here at Here's Help. You can clearly tell Footy doesn't use it for the barber or for his clothing.
What do you mean?
I'm just giving you a hard time, man. I'm just picking on you.
What's wrong with my clothing?
Nothing. Looks good.
That shirt, my grandfather had that shirt on when I was a kid.
It was your grandfather's.
Yeah. So, anyway, tell us about the podcast. Where this podcast go? How can people participate? How can people listen? How can people be participants?
All right. Well, I'm glad you brought that up. You can always check us out. It's the Footy Podcast. Just search Footy's Podcast on YouTube.
Spell Footy because people.
FOTTY''S.
Yeah, a lot of people.
I have seen it with an IE.
IE.
Yeah, and it's good to point out that it's not correct. So it's Footy's Podcast. Obviously, you found one, but you can just click. It says right underneath the screen, right here, Footy's Podcast. Click on that, and it'll show you all the podcasts that we have. And we've covered.
Tell me how I do this.
You just go to YouTube and search up in the window Footy's Podcast. And you click on it, and then they're all lined up right there, and there's a little description on every podcast of what we talk about. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, and then make sure you click the little bell that's on the screen, because that way you get notified every time we add a new podcast. We add a new podcast about once a week. Takes us about a week to get all the editing done. We record on Tuesdays. Usually by the weekend they're on. Usually by Sunday afternoon they're on. And thanks for watching the podcast. We appreciate that. We're getting viewership quite a lot. And I have to shout out again, a lot of my buddies are watching the podcast. My buddy Mike Allen over in Sarasota watches. The former Harley Davidson from Y100 Days, Greg Goronsky, watches all the time. Peter Leonard watches us all the time.
I have a friend.
I know your boat racing buddies watch too.
Yeah, but I have a friend that, how can I explain it? They have a large ranch in Sarasota.
Uh-huh.
It's not really a ranch. It's just property.
Right.
And they will not let anybody on it. They will not let people grow things. They will, but they will.
Right.
And
no hunting.
Yeah, we've been going. They're friends of mine for a long time. We go at least once a year, twice a year, and it's full of hogs.
They're everywhere.
Although we got ocelots.
Wow.
Oh yeah, they're a problem because they're basically a variation of a large cat, and they. But we have a great time. My kids have grown up there with my friends, with all the guys from, most of them from the the crew, and we have a real nice time because we go hunting and camping and cooking out, and it
Sounds awesome.
Yeah, and and there's nobody else there.
Right.
That's it. And we're right next to the park. Can't remember the name of the park, but we're right there. That property borders the park,
Mm-hmm.
so it gives you even more
privacy.
Yeah.
Sounds great. So they've been watching the podcast. Have you gotten some feedback from them?
Yeah, they will. They watch it.
Yeah.
They will.
Well, we appreciate everybody watching, and it's flattering to load them on Facebook and on YouTube rather, and all of a sudden you see views start popping in, and people start making
I gotta
comments
look
and
because
stuff.
I've never looked.
Yeah, Lori and I were talking about it. Lori is our video editor, and we were talking. You've never watched a single podcast, have you?
No. Well, I was on them. I was there.
Well, maybe we'll get you to watch one this week.
Let's arrange for me to see it.
We'll have a watch party.
Yeah,
We'll have a culinary make us
teach
some.
me how to do it.
That's very easy. We'll just go on YouTube and just click in the search window Footy's podcast and make sure you have a couple hours to kill. We've covered, over the time we've been doing this, we've had some real knockdown drag out shows. We've covered some crazy topics, and especially when we start looking back at the old days back in the 80s, and those seem to be the more popular shows. Especially in this pandemic when people have had a lot of time on their hands.
I think we have a lot of followers from our
we do
lives and worlds.
And I forget. There are several Facebook groups. I grew up in South Florida. Do you remember South Florida? There's a South Florida radio group on Facebook, and the moderator will he'll put up a thing, who remembers this or who remembers that.
I wonder if my friend Gary Jeffries is on there.
He might, but I can't think of this guy's name. But a couple of weeks ago, he just put up, who remembers Sonny Fox? And man, the comments.
Besides the police?
No, I don't think he ever got arrested that I know of.
He came awful close up in Boca Raton.
We've
fell down the stairs.
We've all come up pretty close to that, and sometimes we've gone over that line. But it was really cool to see all the comments, and man, there were just dozens and dozens of comments. And the one that I thought was the coolest was people would say, my mom would listen to you guys in the car while she was taking me to school.
Yeah.
And here's this person who was a teenager, and now they're an adult. They have kids of their own, and they were talking about what a great thing it was, how the parent and the child would laugh together at our stuff. And the teenagers don't really share a lot with their parents because they, when they're that age, they really don't want anything to do with their parents. So just the thought that the three of us.
Well, I had a different experience.
I did too.
Because my parents, particularly my father, searched my belongings all the time.
And he had good reason. But it was just, to me, it was very flattering to think that, we could bring parents and teenagers together in the car in the morning to share a laugh, and the three of us could come up with material.
Does Jenny know how to get on all this?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I'll have her pull it up for me.
So that was very flattering. It was very cool to see that, and I appreciated a lot of the comments, and a lot of people were very complimentary. So it was nice to know that we touched so many lives. And I work with a young lady, Beth Stibble, who is an amazing woman. She's our marketing director at the station I work at in West Palm Beach, Hubbard Radio, West Palm Beach. And she grew up listening to us, and she's like my biggest fan. So I actually found an old copy of our Sunny in the Morning album at the house the other day and gave it to her, and she was just thrilled. So it's.
I think I have a copy of that. That's the one
with the cartoons. Looks like a Mad magazine. Yeah. I don't know if you know this, but when we did that album, and we put it together and packaged it, David Ross signed an exclusive deal with Specs Records and Tapes. Specs was the big store. They had 14 locations in South Florida, from West Palm to Miami. And we supported, of course, it was only $1.50, which helped a lot selling it, because in those days, I think an album was $10. But we supported it. We went to almost every location, all 14 locations. The three of us went to, and we'd have those autograph parties.
Yeah.
People would buy the album, and we'd autograph it for them. And I still have at home in my.
I think I got a Specs album.
I'm sure you probably do, but I remember I got the sales report from Specs for 1 week. These are the albums and how in order, how many units we've sold. And there was 1 week where the Best of Sunny in the Morning album outsold Van Halen, we outsold Chicago, we outsold Cyndi Lauper, and we outsold Teddy
Where'd the money go?
Well, there was certain.
I didn't get any.
There was certain things called a production fee that, which I think I learned from you. Yeah, that's the ticket. You always got an angle, Footy. You always had an angle. Well, thanks for watching our podcast, and thanks for going with us down this trip down memory lane, and appreciate you supporting the podcast. Do subscribe. Do click on the little bell so we can let you know when we get new podcasts loaded. And thanks for your support. Buy the Footy sauce when you go to Publix. If you don't see it, be sure you ask the manager that you want Footy sauce.
That's an important point because not every Publix carries it.
Right.
But when people request it,
they'll get it.
They get it.
They come hell or high water.
Just go in there and say, "I'm going to get some Footy sauce." Well, what is that? No, it's wing sauce and it's hot sauce and it's great. And we had last week a young woman showed up with a couple of her friends and she bought like 8 or 10 cases of Footy sauce. She grew up on it in her house.
She actually searched out, found you out because she couldn't find it in stores. So she actually found the Here's Help place.
She left with plenty of it.
Came 151st and 27th Avenue and picked up a bunch. That's very cool.
Yeah, and if you want a Footy sauce, complain to your Publix manager, and they will put it in immediately.
And there's no production fee.
We don't
unlike the album.
And or you can come by Here's Help and you can buy a couple cases. We'll sell them to you, just for the and it's really forgetting everything else. It's a very worthy product.
Yeah.
Like if you like chicken wings,
oh man,
this sauce, will make your life. Yeah. And the hot sauce is great.
Oh, I agree.
For like fish recipes and all kinds of other things.
And shrimp,
rice.
I never thought.
I put it in all the shrimp.
Yeah, I got to try that.
I'm a shrimp nut.
Yeah, me too.
So I get it in there. I put it in there with the ketchup and horseradish.
Wow.
And I put it in with the horseradish.
Holy crap.
Oh, and lime. Always got to.
Well, you got to take the bite out.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for watching the podcast. And again, Footy's podcast on YouTube. And subscribe. And thank you so much for your support. Thanks for buying the Footy sauce. And we'll talk to you again real soon.
And next week, maybe we'll have one or two of our guys come on.
Absolutely. I'd love to do that.